I'm turning an ordinary table into a gaming table. This can be done with any size table, but today I'm creating a smaller one for an off-grid tiny cabin. Although this table may be small, it can be considered a proof of concept build. The style of table that we're using for this is inexpensive, readily available, and is constructed in a way that makes converting it into a game table incredibly easy. Welcome to Treehane Miniatures. The table that I'm using for this conversion has a few key design features that make transforming it into a game table virtually effortless. The first is that it features a solid wood top without any leaves or seams. This will make the tabletop easier to remove for gaming. More important than the top is the frame that the tabletop sits on. This frame attaches to the table using only wood screws and is easily separated from the solid top. It is also important that the table legs attach to this frame and not to the tabletop itself. The frame and legs can stand together as a single unit without the tabletop in place. As a basic overview of how this build is going to proceed, I need to cut a piece of plywood to match the size of this square frame and attach it to the frame in place of the tabletop, using the same 20 screws that are currently holding the tabletop in place. The current location of the tabletop will become the bottom of the game table. This means that I'll have to invert the position of the table legs. Therefore, the legs must be attached in a way so that they are easily inverted without modification. With this style of table, I always find that to be the case. Before we begin this build, let me show you what I've been using as a game table. This is probably the easiest way to improve your gaming experience. For me, the most important part of a game table is the playing surface. So whether it's rolling dice or easily being able to pick up a single card, the play surface can have a huge impact on your gaming experience. To improve our game nights, I purchased a 6-foot by 6-foot yoga mat and cut it to size to fit this 4x6 oval table. I then purchased a $10 polyester tablecloth to cover the mat. I think polyester is the best choice because of how easily cards slide over the surface without getting hung up on anything, like they could with a fabric of a looser knit. The yoga mat costs around $40, so with a $50 investment, you can have a table that's a joy to play on. I will link to a 4x6 yoga mat in the description below. Another great perk of this type of play area is the ease of accident mitigation. We regularly host get-togethers involving games and booze, so spills are bound to happen. In fact, it has happened to us twice where someone has spilled a beverage at the game table. It is so easy to remedy. Everyone at the table lifts up some game components without leaving their seat. I swipe the tablecloth off the table and use it to soak up the fluid. Then I simply grab a new tablecloth from a nearby drawer and we are ready to go. The players lower the components back to the table and it is game on. It happens so fast it's like watching a NASCAR pit stop in action. Okay, enough with that tangent. Let's get back to the build. The first thing that I need to do is remove the legs. To elaborate on the type of table that I'm using, these things can be found at just about any big box store like Target or a Super Walmart. They are very inexpensive. You can easily find a dining table with this type of design for under $200. If you like to go to garage sales or yard sales or rummage sales or whatever they're called in your area, you can pick up a table like this for $20 to $40. This isn't heirloom quality furniture, and the cheap, mass-produced design is what makes it so perfect for an easy conversion. With the table legs gone, I want to remove the frame from the tabletop. However, before I do, I need to mark the inside of the tabletop with the inner measurement of the frame. I do this because I'm going to mount some wooden bumpers to the tabletop that will sit snugly within this frame. These bumpers, or stops, will keep the table from sliding around when it's sitting in place on top of the frame and the table is being used as an ordinary table. To separate the frame from the tabletop, I simply need to remove 20 screws. The fact that there are 20 screws between the frame and the top is pretty good assurance that this tabletop is not glued in place. It also gives me the confidence that I can use this exact same screw configuration to fasten the bottom of the game table securely in place. For my build, I'm using scrap wood from other projects. It's much easier to purchase a single sheet of plywood and cut it to size. I would recommend 3/4 inch plywood for a nice, sturdy play surface. Perhaps 1 inch if you're building a table that's quite large. Since I'm using scrap wood, I'll need to use 2 separate pieces for the play surface. This isn't as convenient to build, but it saves me some cash. Alright, so now I'm going to pretend like I know how to use power tools, and I'm going to cut this wood down to size. I have the measurements clearly marked on the 2 pieces of wood that I'm using for the base of the gaming surface. I measured everything once and I'm prepared to cut twice. And yes, I do have my eyes and ears covered when using the table saw. Safety first. In addition to cutting the basic rectangular shape for the bottom of the frame, I also need to cut out 4 notches for the table legs. I mark these cuts by simply laying the table frame on top of this piece of wood and tracing the shape that needs to be cut out. I honestly feel that a small handsaw would have worked much better for cutting these notches. Something like a small Japanese pole saw would have been preferred. And something told me to check my camera, and I discovered that I did not record screwing the first piece of wood into place. So I guess it's fortunate that I decided to use 2 pieces of wood for the play surface of this table. I first run a bead of wood glue around the outer edge of the wood. Then I lock it into place using the existing holes in the frame and the same screws that came with the table. It's a good idea to have a damp cloth nearby to wipe up any excess glue that gets pressed out of the seam. Then I clamp the end of the wood in place. The fact that the wood is already screwed into place probably makes the clamps unnecessary, but if you saw my DIY spray booth video, you already know that I like to overthink things. In fact, the glue is probably equally unnecessary. While the glue is drying, I move on to the next part of the project. I need to attach little wood blocks to the underside of the tabletop. These are little pieces of scrap wood. I already marked the location for the blocks by tracing the inside of the table frame before separating it from the tabletop. First, I drill pilot holes. I have the depth of the drill bit set slightly deeper than the depth of the blocks. Then I dab a little glue around the pilot hole. These blocks are going to be held in place with a single screw, and the glue will help prevent the blocks from getting knocked askew if they get bumped in some way. The blocks will keep the tabletop from sliding around when it's being used as a conventional table. The last thing that I'm doing for the tabletop itself, and I think I missed recording it, is I'm applying felt tabs to the 4 corners of the table. I'm not sure if you can see it, but I'm using 2 screw holes at each corner to guide the placement of the tabs. The screw holes are where the cross members for the leg connections were attached to the tabletop. Placing the felt tabs in this location ensures that the tabletop is supported by the table legs and not by the frame. However, the main purpose of these soft tabs is to eliminate any rattling or noise when the table is being used as an ordinary table. As I continue to wait for the glue to dry, I work on yet another aspect of the project. I'm cutting a neoprene playmat to fit within the frame of the game table. This was an 8-foot long playmat that I picked up from Miniature Market for $8 a long time ago. I've chopped it up for various projects over the years. I think this may be its last hurrah. To mark the edges of the mat, I simply press it into the base of the table and mark it with a pencil. Once the glue is dry enough to my satisfaction, I use furniture paint to give the interior of the table a uniform look. Remember, this was the underside of the table. It wasn't finished to the same degree as the outer part of the table. It looked very sloppy, it had stain runoff, and multiple types of wood visible. I had considered staining the inside of the table, but that seemed more involved than I was prepared to get involved with. I also considered painting the entire table, but I like how the existing natural wood finish looks on the exterior. I slather this on and then let it dry for a few hours. I should let it dry overnight, but I'm the impatient sort. Alright, we are in the home stretch. Once I get these legs attached, we'll have what resembles a full-fledged gaming table. Then I have one quality of life improvement in mind for the table, and we'll be ready to game. Normally, these legs are easier to install. I would just flip the table upside down and screw them into place. But since we now have a solid floor on the underside of the frame, I need to install the legs with the table in the upright position. This is easily achieved by hanging the corner of the table off the edge of another flat surface, such as this dining table. I then set the table on the floor to install the 4th leg. The final step for my game table build is a quality of life improvement. I want to install some padded armrests so that my arms don't rest directly on the edge of the wood frame. For this, I'm using small diameter pool noodles. These are the skinny pool noodles. I'm going to slice them lengthwise from the outside to the inner hollow section of the noodle. Then I'll use the flexibility of the noodle to separate this cut and slip it over the edge of the table. I'll take care of that, and then we'll come back once I've finished my cuts. So I have this pool noodle cut to size now, and it's going to fit right over the edge of the table. It fits perfectly into place. I can comfortably rest my arms on it. And now it's game time. When this isn't being used as a game table, all 4 edge pads store easily within the table. I really hope you enjoyed this quick and easy gaming table build. This is an idea that I've had stuck in my brain for quite a while now. I'm honestly very surprised by how smoothly this process went, considering it was based solely on images in my head. If you decide to give this build a shot, I'd love to hear how it turns out. Or better yet, convince one of your friends to build a table so you don't have to. I would like to thank my incredible channel members for supporting the effort that I put into videos like this. You too can become a channel member for as little as $1.99 per month and receive perks such as early access to videos, extended versions of our painting tutorials, and even a tier that lets you choose a miniature for me to paint. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to join our growing community of craftsmen.